the federal government only has so much control over how this is handled, right? Because at the end of the day, the states decide for themselves what sort of mandates.
Yes, the states will decide for themselves what they want to do in response to the virus.
Right.
In response to anything, but we'll just stick with the virus for now.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so what I see often, and even what came up in a recent conversation in my household, is because people are concerned, people are worried, this is a crisis, right? Mm-hmm. There is an instinct to, because they want to protect life, they want to protect the health of people and themselves, there is a desire for a more forceful measure to be taken, right?
Yeah, for sure. Especially, yes. In regard to this virus, yes. More people are on board with that idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And the question, and whether or not you want to, argue that Trump has handled this and his administration has handled this perfectly or whatever is kind of irrelevant to the fact that at the end of the day, what you're asking for is more heavy-handed measures to be taken in order to combat this, right? Because the argument that I'm seeing is and it is to some degree a cultural thing as well, and we can get into that. There's a lot of, because of the internet and Twitter and all these things, there's a lot of people in other countries like Germany and whatnot making comments yeah, we don't have an issue with this virus right now because when we were told to wear masks, everybody wore masks.
Yeah.
Right? And what happened in America, in large part due to people's interpretation of American mythos, is that they went, wearing a mask is an infringement on my liberties. The government can't tell me to do that. Right? And the question is, to me, who is in more alignment with, or is anybody really in more alignment with the actual values in this case? Is it the person arguing for their right to not wear a mask? Or is it the people arguing for in this case, it would be the federal government that you're really asking to do something. The federal government to enact some sort of more stringent mandate, some forceful mandate to make sure that people are doing what needs to be done to keep everyone safe.
Right.
Right. And so to me, it's we're reaching in this instance, which is a very unique instance. This is, I don't know if the founding fathers were considering pandemics when they wrote this, but the question is this one of those things where are we willing to pull back on individual liberty in order to have more communal safety in this case? And what are the implications of that? Or is this just the price that we pay for having liberty?
Right.
And is that a price that we're willing to pay?
So when it comes to the individual's right to question, especially let's just keep with the pandemic, the mask thing where, states can't, or governments, no matter if the state or federal, can't require me to wear a mask because that infringes upon my rights. My personal argument against that is by you not wearing a mask and understanding and knowing the science that we know now and understand now, if you decide to leave your house and go grocery shopping or go anywhere outside where there's other people, and you are not being cognizant of your distance between others or touching the same things they're touching and all that stuff, you are in effect infringing upon their rights to a pursuit of health or happiness because you might inadvertently spread this virus to them. And it's not their fault. Maybe they're wearing a mask. Maybe they're not. I don't know. But because you decided as an individual, I will not do this, you have effectively harmed someone else and stopped them from pursuing their liberty in this country. Now, I understand that, being forced to wear a mask is kind of infringement on your rights, as my body kind of thing. This is I get to choose what I want to do with my body.
Right.
You telling me what I need to do is not okay. But there should be, I guess, some room for like the same thing with free speech. Free speech is free until it gets someone killed or until you're calling for violence.
Right.
there should be that limit as well in terms of your liberty. I think you can apply the same rule. Where it's like if your liberty can basically cause harm to other people, what you're deciding to do, then that might be the limit that we draw. And is that a federal thing or is that a state thing? That's a good question. I feel like the federal government should be enforcing things that basically will cover the entire country, despite what those states think. But like there are limits to that, and there should be limits to what the federal government can do. But this is one of those things where, in this instance, it's too important to our economy is in shambles or is about to be in shambles because I think the $600 plus up is done this month. So the people who have been able to get by and buy groceries and take care of their families they've been okay for now. And I know this is a different subject. What I'm saying is, though, because of this pandemic alone, we are about to experience probably one of the worst economic collapses that we've seen in our lifetime.
Yes.
And maybe perhaps in American history. I don't know. I'm not an economist, but just writing on the wall, people don't have work and people can't buy stuff. And that's how our economy runs. Just because the stock market's been doing great the last few months does not mean it's going well as an economy. By not wearing a mask in mass, not one person's fault, but if several people are deciding not to wear masks, and that is one of the easily the most effective things we can do to prevent the spread of this virus and to prevent, the spread of the virus, we are effectively destroying ourselves. We are destroying the health of our communities and our families. We are destroying our economy. We are destroying our nation.
Yeah.
So I think if you draw the line there, it's like, if your liberty is destroying, even if it's not what you mean to do,
right? If
your liberty is going to destroy what this country is and what the world is, there's a line that we need to draw. And it's like, it's tough nuts or whatever you say. I don't know. I don't want to say, well, I think it's tough shit. Like, just do it. Wear the mask. It's not that hard. If you can't wear it, like for medical reasons, if that's a thing,
right?
Then practice the other things. Don't go out. Have someone else buy your groceries for you. Do those things. Like, we as a society can ostracize people, socially, and I think we should. The government shouldn't do it necessarily.
Socially, yes. I don't think the government should be in the business of ostracizing people.
We as people should understand as a unit. That this is a very serious threat, and already so many people have been affected by it financially, and I think a lot more are coming.
Right.
So anyway, that's my 10 cents.
And so I'm gonna
2 cents.
10 cents. No,
I know nothing.
I know.
I just want to reiterate, like the last time we spoke, I would say things, and I don't think I preface it with like I really don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, these are my feelings.
Who does?
So.
We're all just talking.
But
Okay, so let me push back on that a little bit. So I agree with your sentiment. The general idea is sound, but at the end of the day, what you're talking about is curtailing individual liberties for communal benefit. As you see it.
That's the way I see it.
And so the question is now, the thing is what I see is happening is if we're going to do this properly, have this conversation properly as like a country and come to a real conclusion, make real change, it affects nothing about this pandemic currently. Like it's not going to happen fast enough to actually have actionable things.
Wait.
But
what do you mean?
Well, the question is, where do you draw the line for that? Because now, let's say in the instance of this pandemic, you just go, you know what? In this case, like we have decided because using your logic,
right,
because what you're doing is damaging to other people, and that's where the line should be, right? Now the federal government has license to come in and make a mandate that all states have to follow, right?
In this instance,
yes,
I know what you're getting at.
I know, but that's not how our legal system works.
Yeah,
our legal system doesn't work that way.
They use precedent, don't they?
They use precedent. So you've set a precedent once you do that, right?
Yes.
And now it comes down to the definition. Like you have to define what a pandemic is, because if you want to keep that restricted.
Yeah.
Any administration can claim that something is a pandemic and then use those
powers.
And
you know they will. You know they will.
Right. These are all things like even in the Federalist Papers they talk about the government will probably try to encroach. So
yeah, they have to prove that it's a unique circumstance, like such as a pandemic. They have to prove that what you're doing as an individual on this level with the mask wearing thing is effective and will prevent or at least help prevent something.
Right.
Now, I guess that gets a little dicey because
Yes.
you can't really prove too well, like, if this number of individuals do this, this will not happen. You can't prove something that hasn't happened yet.
It's almost impossible to prove a negative.
Yes. So, but the thing is, people are dying.
No,
I don't know. Like, I'm not an expert. I can't speak to like the data on this stuff.
Right.
But, I don't know how you would write that out in law. I don't know how you can prevent the federal government from using that precedent in the future against the people that it's supposed to be governing. But
and let me I should have prefaced all this with like, this is mostly a thought experiment for me. I wear masks when I go out.
No, Alec is definitely not anti-mask person.
It's more just, it's one thing to say as a society, as a culture, that you should do this. It's an entirely different thing when you say that the government, especially at the federal level, now has the right to mandate something. And so like that's the real concern that comes in, is like, how do we use this? Where do we draw the lines? Because like your same argument, and I know that there is debate about this, especially in like states like California, your same argument could be used for like HIV. Like, if you know that you have it and you're not divulging that information and you're not using protective practices and you spread it to somebody else, that could become easily, if people aren't doing that, that could become a pandemic of all of its own. And so like, does it only apply? Why would it only apply when it's already a pandemic? Why doesn't it apply in preventing pandemics? Arguably, that would make the most sense if you're trying to.
You're gonna make people wear masks all the time.
Yeah, like, and that's kind of, I'm just playing it out.
No,
like,
I can see. I know there's an administration out right now that loves to test the limits of what they can do, and that's not the only administration that's done that.
Nah.
So
I think that's every administration since I've been alive.
That's true. That's true. No, I hear your point. That is it the federal government's role? Like in a dire situation like this, where it is crumbling our nation, in every sense, it feels like the federal government should be able to mandate something like that. It just feels like it should be doing something, but I hear what you're saying. Like, what stops them from doing something that's not in a dire situation for the nation and making people.
It's the entire purpose of the separation of powers in our government system is to prevent that exact thing from happening.
Right.